Hello friends, here are 100 multiple choice questions focusing on the constitutions of various countries around the world. Let's start. 1. Which country has the longest written constitution in the world? Correct option B. India. 2. Which of the following countries has an unwritten uncodified constitution? Correct option C. United Kingdom. 3. The concept of due process or law is a prominent feature of the Constitution of which country? Correct option B. United States. 4. From which country's constitution did India borrow the concept or directive principles of state policy, DPSP? Correct option Ireland. 5. The system of judicial review originated in the constitution of which nation? Correct option C. United States. 6. Which country's constitution is famous for containing the Bill of Rights as its first 10 amendments? Correct option D. United States. 7. The absolute power of Parliament, known as parliamentary sovereignty, is a core principle of which country's constitutional setup? Correct option B. United Kingdom. 8. Which country's constitution relies heavily on the principle of direct democracy, allowing citizens to vote on laws through referendums? Correct option C. Switzerland. 9. The basic feature of the Japanese constitution, which explicitly renounces war as a sovereign right of the nation, is found in which article? Correct option B. Article 9. 10. Which country possesses the oldest active written constitution in the world today? Correct option B. United States. 11. The concept of liberty, equality, and fraternity in many modern constitutions, including India's, was inspired by which country's historical event? Correct option C. French Revolution. 12. The constitutional mechanism, a constructive vote of no confidence, belongs to which country? Correct option C. Germany. 13. Which country's constitution is officially known as the Basic Law, Grundgesetz? Correct option B. Germany. 14. The Weimar Constitution is historically associated with which country? Correct option C. Germany. 15. The system of federation with a strong center adopted by India was primarily modeled on the constitution of which country? Correct option B. Canada. 16. Which country's constitution features a unique system where the head of state is a collective body rather than a single individual? Correct option A. Switzerland. 17. From which country's constitution did India adopt the procedure for amending the constitution? Correct option A. South Africa. 18. The principle of concurrent list in the Australian constitution was borrowed by India. What does this list contain? Correct option C. Subjects on which both central and state governments can legislate. 19. The constitution of which country is known to be the most rigid, requiring a complex process in every 3/4 of states to pass amendments? Correct option C. United States. 20. The idea or the preamble to a constitution was first introduced by which nation? Correct option C. United States. 21. Which country's constitution is characterized by the concept of separation of powers in its strictest functional form between the executive, legislature, and judiciary? Correct option C. United States. 22. The Fifth Republic of France is governed by a constitution that was adopted in which year? Correct option D. 1958. 23. The concept of fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution was inspired by the Constitution of which former entity? Correct option B. USSR, Soviet Union. 24. Which country has a semi-presidential system of government where both a president and a prime minister have significant executive powers? Correct option C. France. 25. The constitution of which country includes the Magna Carta, 1215, as one of its historical baseline documents? Correct option B. United Kingdom. 26. The constitutional setup of Canada recognizes which entity as the official head of state? Correct option B, the British monarch. 27. Which nation's constitution was drafted during the Allied occupation after World War II, often called the MacArthur Constitution? Correct option B, Japan. 28. The Constitution of South Africa, adopted in 1996, is widely praised for its extensive protection of which rights? Correct option B, socio-economic and human rights. 29. Which country's constitution cannot be amended on certain core principles like democracy and federal structure due to an explicit eternity clause? Correct option C, Germany. 30. The system of asymmetric federalism, where certain states or provinces have more autonomy than others, is a prominent feature of which constitution? Correct option B, India. 31. The judicial doctrine of basic structure, Bunyadi Dhancha, which restricts the parliament's power to amend certain core elements of the constitution, was developed in which country? Correct option B, India. 32. Which country's constitution is completely integrated with the concept or Islamic Sharia as its primary and supreme source of legislation? Correct option B, Saudi Arabia. 33. The creation of the Office of Ombudsman, Lokpal, Lokyukta, to investigate corruption originated from the constitutional history of which country? Correct option B, Sweden. 34. In the Constitution Australia, the formal power to dissolve the federal parliament rests with which authority? Correct option B, the Governor General. 35. The constitutional principle of rule of law was classically defined and popularized by which British jurist? Correct option B, A.V. Dicey. 36. The concept of suspensive veto, where the president can send a bill back to parliament for reconsideration, but cannot block it indefinitely, is a key feature of which constitution? Correct option B, India. 37. Which country's constitution allows for the option of secession, alag hone ka adhikar, for its constituent states or republics? Correct option B, Soviet Union, USSR. 38. Double jeopardy clause, protecting citizens from being tried twice for the same crime, is prominently featured in which constitutional amendment of the USA? Correct option D, Fifth Amendment. 39. The political philosophy of confederation, where states retain almost all their sovereignty and give minimal powers to a central body, was the first constitutional system of which country? Correct option B, United States. 40. Which European country's constitution requires mandatory public referendums for joining any international military, alliance, or supranational organization due to its strict policy of neutrality? Correct option B, Switzerland. 41. The concept of proportional representation in legislative elections is mandatory under the constitution of which country? Correct option C, Germany. 42. The system of constitutional courts, which are entirely separate from the regular Supreme Court to check the constitutionality or laws, was pioneered in Europe by which country's constitution? Correct option C, Austria. 53. The Irish Free State Constitution on 1922 was replaced by the modern Constitution of Ireland in which year? Correct option A, 1937. 44. The concept of collective responsibility of the cabinet to the legislature is a core feature of which constitutional system? Correct option B, parliamentary system. 45. Which nation's constitution contains a provision stating that its Supreme Court justices are appointed for life terms to ensure complete judicial independence? Correct option C, United States. 46. The concept of procedure established by law, Kanun Dwara Sthapit Prakriya, as found in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, was adapted from which country? Correct option C, Japan. 47. The constitutional head of state in Australia is represented locally by whom? Correct option B, the Governor General. 48. Which country's constitution allows its provinces to have their own separate provincial constitutions alongside the national federal constitution? Correct option D, United States. 49. The constitution of which country includes a unique system of constructive dismissal of parliament to prevent frequent snap elections? Correct option B, Germany. 50. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms forms a major part of the constitutional law of which nation? Correct option C, Canada. 51. Which country's constitution was unique for historically allowing a veto power to 5 permanent members of its legislature's Executive Security Council? Correct option B, United Nations, UN Charter. 52. The principle of judicial independence is guaranteed in the Indian Constitution primarily through borrowing concepts from which country? Correct option A, USA. 53. Which nation has a constitutional council, Conseil Constitutionnel, tasked specifically with reviewing bills before they are officially promulgated into law? Correct option B, France. 54. The concept or emergency provisions, Apatkalin Pravdhan, in the Indian Constitution which temporarily suspend fundamental rights, was heavily influenced by which historical setup? Correct option B, Weimar Constitution or Germany. 55. Which country's constitution is officially characterized by a dual executive featuring a powerful monarch alongside an elected prime minister? Correct option C, Thailand. 56. The system of impeachment, Mahabhiyog, or the head of state was originally derived from the constitutional history of which country? Correct option B, United Kingdom. 57. The current constitution of the Russian Federation was adopted via a nationwide referendum, in which year? Correct option C, 1993. 58. The phrase "We the people" serves as the opening line for the constitutions of both India and which other country? Correct option B, United States. 59. Which country's constitution requires its prime minister to be selected from the lower house of parliament exclusively, known as the House of Commons? Correct option C, United Kingdom. 60. The concept of a single citizenship across the entire nation, as seen in India, was borrowed from which country's constitution? Correct option C, United Kingdom. 61. The Constitution of Switzerland is unique because it allows citizens to propose constitutional amendments through what tool? Correct option B, popular initiative. 62. The principle of equal protection of the laws in the Indian Constitution is borrowed from which country? Correct option B, United States. 63. Which nation has a constitutional provision that requires a mandatory general election every 5 years under the fixed-term parliaments concept? Correct option B, United Kingdom. 64. The concept or republic in the preamble of the Indian Constitution signifying an elected head of state was adapted from which country? Correct option B, France. 65. The formal amendment of the United States Constitution requires the ratification of how many states? Correct option C, 3/4 of the states. 66. The constitutional model or separation of church and state, known strictly as laicite, is a fundamental pillar of which nation? Correct option C, France. 67. The Basic Law of Hong Kong serves as its mini-constitution. Under whose sovereign constitutional framework does it exist? Correct option B, People's Republic of China. 68. Which country's constitution explicitly states that the state has no official religion, making it a secular state, yet includes a historical reference to its Christian heritage in its preamble? Correct option B, Poland. 69. The constitutional power of pocket veto is a unique tactical option available to the president of which country? Correct option C, United States. 70. The creation of a union or states rather than a federation of states, in Article 1 of the Indian Constitution emphasizes unity borrowed from the constitutional language of which country? Correct option B. Canada. 71. The concept of public interest litigation, PIL, which expanded constitutional access to justice for the poor originated in which country? Correct option C. United States. 72. Which country's constitution was historically known for having an unwritten constitutional principle called the king can do no wrong? Correct option B. United Kingdom. 73. The concept or rule of law implies that. Correct option C. No individual is above the law and all are equal before courts. 74. The constitutional system of South Africa requires that the president of the country be elected by whom? Correct option B. The National Assembly, lower house of parliament. 75. The Meiji Constitution of 1889 belonged to which nation before its radical post-war overhaul? Correct option B. Japan. 76. Which constitutional framework explicitly relies on conventions to manage the relationship between the Prime Minister and the monarch? Correct option B. United Kingdom. 77. The constitutional body known as the Bundesrat represents what entity in Germany's legislative branch? Correct option B. The 16 federal state governments. 78. From which country did the United States Constitution adopt the philosophical separation of executive and legislative functions? Correct option B. French Enlightenment philosophy, Montesquieu. 79. The concept or method of election of the president in India was borrowed from the constitution of which country? Correct option B. Ireland. 80. Which nation's constitution contains a provision allowing the central government to dissolve state or regional assemblies during political breakdowns via an emergency declaration? Correct option B. India. 81. The legal doctrine of constitutional supremacy implies that. Correct option B. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any conflicting law is void. 82. The constitutional mechanism or an instrument of accession was historically used to integrate independent princely states into which country's constitutional system? Correct option C. India. 83. Which country's constitution holds the record for being the shortest written national constitution containing only 7 original articles? Correct option C. United States. 84. The Plurinational Constitution of 2009, which recognizes multiple indigenous nations within a single state framework, belongs to which country? Correct option B. Bolivia. 85. The principle of judicial activism is often viewed as an extension of constitutional powers in which two democratic nations? Correct option B. United States and India. 86. The concept of proclamation of financial emergency under Article 360 of the Indian Constitution has no direct parallel in which country's constitution despite its federal nature? Correct option A. USA. 87. Which article of the Constitution of the United States outlines the process and requirements for the impeachment of a president? Correct option B. Article 2. 88. The constitutional amendment system of Australia requires a double majority to pass. What does this mean? Correct option B. Majority of voters nationwide and a majority of voters in a majority of states. 89. The fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution act as a limitation on the powers of which entity? Correct option B. The state, government and legislature. 90. The modern Constitution of South Africa was signed into law by which historic global leader? Correct option B. Nelson Mandela. 91. The concept of interstate council to solve disputes between different regions within a federation is found in the Constitution of which country? Correct option C. India. 92. The statutory power known as devolution allows regional parliaments in Scotland and Wales to make laws. Which uncodified constitutional framework contains this? And correct option B. United Kingdom. 93. Which nation's constitution is noted for its directive principles of social policy, which served as the template for Ireland's own constitution before influencing India? Correct option A. Spain. 94. The gerrymandering issue, involving the manipulative redrawing of legislative constituency boundaries, is a frequent constitutional dispute in which country? Correct option C. United States. 95. The constitutional principle that taxes cannot be levied without legislative approval is historically traced back to which famous English document? Correct option B. Magna Carta 1215. 96. The constitution of which country includes a unique system of compulsory voting Anivarya Matdan for all adult citizens backed by minor legal penalties? Correct option C. Australia. 97. The power to resolve constitutional disputes between the central government and the regional states in Canada rests with which body? Correct option B. The Supreme Court of Canada. 98. The concept of fundamental rights enforceability through constitutional remedies, like writs, habeas corpus mandamus, in India was inherited from which system? Correct option B. British common law, prerogative writs. 99. The constitution of which country can be changed by a simple majority vote in parliament, making it the most flexible written constitution? Correct option B. New Zealand. 100. The philosophical concept of sovereign democratic republic in the Indian constitution marks a complete break from which formal historical status? Correct option B. British Dominion status. Thanks for watching.